The town of Red Bluff, Texas, had an opinion about Maggie Callaway. It had always had one. From the time she was 12 years old and already taller than most of the boys in her class through the years when she grew into a woman who was by the measurements that Red Bluff applied to such things simply too much. Too tall. Too loud when she laughed, which she did often and without apology. Too capable, which was the one that bothered people the most. Because capable women in 1877 made a particular kind of man uncomfortable in a way he couldn't quite articulate and therefore expressed his criticism. She was 28 years old and she ran the Callaway feed store, had run it for 4 years since her father's hands gave out, and he could no longer manage the heavy lifting and the accounts simultaneously. She managed both. She lifted the 50-pound feed sacks without particular drama and kept the accounts with the precision of someone who had taught herself bookkeeping from a manual she had ordered from a publisher in Chicago. Because Red Bluff didn't have the kind of school that taught such things to girls, she was 5 feet 10 inches tall. Remarkable in 1877 anywhere, and particularly remarkable in a small Texas town where the average man stood 5 feet 7 and where her height was commented upon with the regularity of weather. She had been proposed to twice. The first time at 23 by a farmer named Grady, whose primary concern she had gathered from the conversation was that she could help with the harvest. She had declined. The second time at 26 by a shopkeeper from Abilene who had come through on business and who had told her with what he apparently believed was charm that a woman her size must be very lonely. She had also declined more firmly, and he had left Red Bluff the following morning. The town's conclusion, delivered in the way that small towns deliver conclusions, not all at once, but through the accumulated weight of 100 small comments over many years, was that Maggie Callaway was simply too much for any man. Maggie had her own conclusion about this, which was that the men she had encountered had been too little for her, which was a different problem, and one she found less distressing than the town seemed to think she should. She was also not, if she was honest with herself, in the quiet of the feed store evenings when the accounts were done and the town had gone home and the Texas dark came down around the building, not entirely satisfied either. There was a thing she hadn't found. She knew its shape without knowing its name. She had stopped expecting to find it in Red Bluff, which had shown her most of what it had. She was wrong about that. He arrived on a Wednesday in October. His name was Cole Bridger, and he had come to Red Bluff because the nearest ranch of any size, the McCriedi operation, 8 miles east, had hired him as their new foreman, which was a position he had earned through 12 years of cattle work in 3 states, and which he had accepted because the McCriedi spread was good land and the pay was fair, and he was 35 years old and tired of moving. He came to the Callaway feed store on his first morning in town because the feed store was where a new ranch foreman went first to establish accounts and pricing and the working relationship that would govern the next several years of his professional life. He pushed through the door at 8 o'clock. Maggie was lifting a sack of grain from the floor to the shelf behind the counter, a 50-pound sack handled with the efficiency of someone who has done this 10,000 times. And she set it in place and turned and looked at him. She was taller than he'd expected, taller than most women he'd met, and taller than several men. She had dark red hair that was pinned up with the practical efficiency of someone who pins their hair to keep it out of the way rather than to make a point about it. Brown eyes, direct and assessing. A canvas apron over a dark blue dress. Hands that were capable, he noticed. Hands having worked with them his whole life. "Morning," she said. "What can I help you with?" "I'm the new foreman at McCriedi," he said. "Cole Bridger. I need to set up an account." "Bridger," she said. She went to the ledger on the counter. "How do you spell it?" he told her. She wrote it without looking up. "What are your quantities?" she said. He told her that too. She wrote it down with the speed of someone who has been doing this for years. "Terms are payment on the 1st of the month," she said. "McCriedi's previous account was always current. I'll extend the same terms." "Appreciated," he said. Their eyes met in the particular way they had met when he came through the door, Direct, without performance. Two people looking at each other the way you look at something you are genuinely interested in. "You new to the territory?" she said. "Came from Wyoming," he said. "Before that, Colorado. Before that, Kansas." "Long way," she said. "Ready to stop?" he said. She looked at him for a moment with those direct brown eyes. "Well," she said. "Red Bluff is a decent place to stop so far," he said. She almost smiled. He went back to McCriedi, but he thought about the feed store the whole ride out. He came back Thursday, not for feed. The account was established. The first delivery wasn't due until the following week. He came back because he was in town for supplies, and because the feed store was on the way to the general store. And because these were the reasons he gave himself, which were accurate as far as they went. Maggie was behind the counter. She looked up when he came in. "Mr. Bridger," she said. "Miss Callaway," he said. "I don't need anything. I was passing and I thought I'd—" He stopped. She waited. "I thought I'd see if you had any recommendations for the town," he said. "I'm new. A person who knows the place is useful." She looked at him with the expression of someone who is evaluating the stated reason for a visit and has formed an opinion about its completeness. "Recommendations," she said. "Where to eat," he said. "Who to trust. What to avoid." She leaned on the counter. "Mrs. Porto's on the south end does the best food," she said. "The barber on Main Street is honest, and the one on 2nd Street is not. The sheriff is competent. The town council is less so. The Harmon brothers at the livery will try to overcharge you until they figure out you know horses, at which point they'll treat you fairly." She paused. "Anything else?" "Who should I avoid?" he said. "Anyone who tells you Red Bluff is a simple town," she said. "It isn't. No town is." He looked at her. "What about you?" he said. "Should I avoid you?" The directness of it surprised her. She could see a slight widening of the eyes before she recovered. "Most people in Red Bluff," she said, "would tell you." "Yes." "Most people in Red Bluff," he said, "don't know what they're talking about." She looked at him for a long moment. "You've been here 2 days," she said. "Long enough," he said. He bought a small bag of grain he didn't need, said good morning, and left. Maggie stood at the counter for a moment after the door closed. Then she went back to her accounts, but she did them more slowly than usual. The town noticed because small towns notice everything. By the end of the second week, it was known that the new McCriedi foreman came to the feed store more often than the feed schedule required. By the end of the third week, it was known that he and Maggie Callaway had been seen talking on the feed store porch on 2 separate evenings after closing. By the end of the month, Red Bluff had formed the collective opinion that Cole Bridger either didn't know about Maggie Callaway's reputation for being too much, or hadn't been told clearly enough. Several people took it upon themselves to tell him clearly enough. It was Bill Harmon, the honest one at the livery, who said it most directly, with the genuine concern of a man who liked Cole and thought he was heading toward a situation. "Maggie Callaway's a good woman," Bill said one afternoon while Cole was checking his horse's shoes. "But she's a lot. Most men can't handle her. She's got opinions about everything. She runs that store like a general runs an army. She's taller than you, which some men find." "Bill," Cole said without looking up from the hoof he was examining, "I appreciate what you're doing. I don't need it." Bill looked at him. "You know what you're getting into," Bill said. It wasn't quite a question. "I know what I'm hoping to get into," Cole said, "which is a conversation with a woman who has something worth saying. That's rarer than people think." Bill thought about this. "She's turned down 2 men already," he said. "Good," Cole said. "That tells me she knows her own mind." Bill scratched his head. "You're a strange man, Bridger," he said. "Probably," Cole agreed and went back to the hoof. It was a Friday in November when it changed. Cole had come by the store at closing time, 6 o'clock, the Texas fall dark coming down fast with no particular excuse prepared, which was itself a kind of honesty. Maggie was locking the front door when he rode up, and she turned and looked at him and waited. "I don't have a reason," he said from the saddle. "I know," she said. "I thought we can walk," he said. "Along the river if you wanted." She looked at him for a moment, then she untied her apron and hung it on the door peg and said, "Give me a minute." They walked along the Red Bluff River in the early dark, the cottonwoods bare now, and the water low and the stars beginning over the flat Texas horizon. It was cold enough for breath to show. And Maggie had put on her coat, a good wool coat, dark green, that suited her in the way that things suit people when they've chosen them without consulting anyone else's opinion. Not carefully. Not the conversation of two people managing the impression they're making. The other kind. She told him about the feed store and her father and the manual she'd ordered from Chicago and what it had felt like to teach herself bookkeeping at 19. Because she needed to know it, and there was no one to teach her. He told her about Wyoming and Colorado and Kansas and the 12 years of moving and why he had finally decided to stop and what stopping felt like after that long in motion. "Why Red Bluff specifically?" she said. "McCriedi's offered the position," he said, "but I'd looked at 3 other offers before I took it." He paused. Something about this part of the territory felt right. "The land?" she said. "Maybe," he said. "I hadn't been here 2 days before I thought maybe it was something else." She looked at him sideways. "You're not subtle," she said. "No," he said. "I never saw the point." They walked a while in the comfortable silence of people who had found that the other person's quiet is not empty. Then Maggie said with the honesty that was simply her way, "People have been telling you things about me." "Yes." "What things?" "That you're too much for any man." She looked at the river. "And I've spent 3 weeks having conversations with you," he said. "And I think the people who said that were measuring you against men who weren't big enough for the measurement." He paused. "That's not your problem. That's theirs." She was quiet for a long moment. "You don't know me that well," she said. "I know you well enough," he said. "I know you taught yourself bookkeeping from a manual because you needed to know it. I know you run that store the way it ought to be run. I know you said no to 2 men who weren't right and didn't apologize for it." He looked at her. "I know that when you laugh, it's because something is actually funny and not because someone expects you to." She stopped walking. She turned and looked at him in the early dark with the cottonwoods bare above them and the river running low and cold beside them. She looked at Cole Bridger with the full attention of someone who has been seen clearly and is deciding what to do about it. "Cole," she said. "Yes," he said. "What exactly are you doing?" she said. "I'm telling you," he said, "that I think the town of Red Bluff has been wrong about you for a long time, and I'd like the chance to be right about you instead." He paused. "If you'll let me." She held his gaze. The river moved past them, and the stars came further out, and the Texas night settled in around them with the particular intimacy of cold air and open country. "All right," she said. Just that. But it was enough. December came, and with it the particular quality of a Texas winter. Not Montana cold, not Wyoming brutal, but a steady gray chill that settled into the bones of the day and required a fire in the evening, and the kind of company that makes a fire better. Cole and Maggie had found that company in each other. They spent the December evenings alternately at the feed store after closing, where the stove was good and the lamplight was warm, and the conversation went wherever it went, and at the McCriedi ranch where Cole had the foreman's house and where Maggie came twice chaperoned by the entirely transparent pretense of delivering account statements in person. The town had given up managing its opinion and settled into a position of interested observation. On a Saturday morning in the middle of December, Cole arrived at the feed store at 7 with his horse and a second horse, a gray mare of considerable beauty, saddled and ready. And Maggie came out to find 2 horses and 1 cowboy looking at her with the expression he got when he had done something he was pleased about. "What is this?" she said. "I want to show you the north pasture," he said. "There's something worth seeing up there in this weather." He looked at the gray mare. "Her name is Silver. She's the steadiest horse on the McCriedi operation. 15 hands, deep chest, the right build." He paused. "She's the right build for you." Maggie looked at the mare, then at Cole. She had not ridden in 3 years since the last horse she had tried to borrow from the livery had been, with the casual cruelty of public embarrassment, too small for her. And she had been told so in front of 4 people in a way that had been intended to be humorous and had not been. "Cole," she said. "I know," he said. "I heard about the livery." His expression said what he thought of it without requiring words. "This is different. Silver is 16 hands. She's got the back for it. I checked the saddle myself this morning." He looked at her. "Just sit down and let me show you." She looked at the mare again. Silver looked back at her with the dark, patient eyes of a horse that has been selected for good character and knows it. Maggie Callaway was not a woman who let fear make her decisions. She put her foot in the stirrup. She swung up, and Silver, steady, solid, unbothered, stood exactly as she should, taking the weight with the easy confidence of an animal that is the right size for the job and knows that too. Maggie sat in the saddle and felt the ground from a height she hadn't felt in 3 years, and looked down at Cole Bridger, who was looking up at her with the expression she was coming to know. The one that was satisfaction, and something warmer than satisfaction together. "Well," he said. "Well," she said, and she was smiling. The real smile, the full one. "She fits." "She does," he said. He swung up on his own horse, and they rode north toward the McCriedi pasture in the December morning, and Maggie rode Silver with the ease of someone remembering something her body had known and been kept from, and the Texas winter opened up around them in its flat gray beauty. The north pasture was worth seeing. It was a long stretch of grassland that in summer was unremarkable, and in December had caught the frost in a way that made every blade stand separate and crystalline. The whole field lit by the low winter sun into something that was silver and gold and entirely itself. A creek ran along the eastern edge and had frozen at the edges, but not the center, and the combination of moving water and still ice was a thing that required no commentary. They stopped their horses at the fence line and looked at it. "You were right," Maggie said. "I usually am about what's worth seeing," he said. She looked at him. "That's not a quality that endears you to people," she said. "Fortunately," he said, "I'm not trying to endear myself to people. Just to you." She looked at the pasture. "How is that going?" she said. The tone was light almost. "You tell me," he said. A pause. The frost field glittered in the low sun. "Better than I expected," she said. "When you first came through that door." "What did you expect?" he said. "Another man who would find out I was too much," she said. "And leave." "Maggie," he said, "I have been looking for someone who was enough for as long as I've been looking." He turned his horse so he was facing her directly. "You are the first person I have met who was actually enough." He paused. "The town has it backwards." She looked at him. The thing that she had known the shape of without knowing its name, the thing she had stopped expecting to find in Red Bluff, was sitting on a horse in front of her in the December frost field, and looking at her with amber eyes that were entirely serious and entirely warm and entirely decided. She knew it the way you know things that are true. "Cole," she said. "Yes." "Ask me," she said. He asked her. She said yes. They were married in February, a simple ceremony because Maggie had no interest in elaborate, and Cole had no patience for it. And the combination produced exactly the wedding they both wanted. which was the one where the important thing happened, and the unnecessary things didn't. Red Bluff attended in full. Because Red Bluff attended everything, and because there was an additional quality of interest in attending the wedding of a woman the town had written off, and a man who had apparently not read the town's opinion on the subject. Mrs. Porto, who made the wedding cake, said afterward that she had known all along. Bill Harmon at the livery said he had known since the conversation about Maggie's opinions that Bridger was either very brave or very smart, and had concluded it was both. The two men who had proposed to Maggie, Grady the farmer and the shopkeeper from Abilene, were not present, being in other places, which was appropriate. Maggie's father, who had been watching the situation from his chair by the fire in the apartment above the feed store, with the contained satisfaction of a man who has hoped for something for a long time and is watching it arrive, sat in the front row and did not try to hold anything back when the moment came, which it did clearly and simply and entirely right. Cole Bridger ran the McCriedi foreman operation with the competence that had gotten him hired, and with an additional quality that good work takes on when the person doing it has somewhere worth coming home to at the end of the day. Maggie ran the Callaway feed store and the Callaway accounts, and increasingly the McCriedi accounts as well, because competence expands into available space, and there was available space, and she was very competent. She rode Silver every Saturday morning. This became known in Red Bluff and then accepted, and then in the way, the things become accepted and then invisible. Simply part of what was true about Maggie Bridger, which was what she was called now. Though she kept Callaway on the feed store sign because it had been her father's name on it for 30 years, and she saw no reason to change it. The town's opinion about her revised itself gradually in the way that small-town opinions revise,